Good evening, everyone. I'm Michael O'Reilly, the chairman of the Monroe Planning and Zoning Commission. It's November the 19th.
This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone, to the November 19th, 2020 Town of Monroe Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting. It's now 7 p.m. and we'll start the meeting. I'm going to briefly read information regarding electronic public meetings. On March 14th, in response to COVID-19 pandemic, in an effort to reduce the transmission by virtue of attendance at public hearings, Governor Lamont suspended in-person open meeting requirements. Accordingly, the town of Monroe selected GoToMeeting. This technology will permit up to 250 members of the public to participate in real time. Any member of the public who desires to submit written information relative to the business set forth on the agenda may do so up to 1 hour in advance of the meeting by electronic mail. Notice is hereby given that this remote electronic public meeting shall, 1, permit the public to view and listen anonymously, and when permitted, participate in real time. 2, be recorded and posted on the town's website within 7 days, and 3, be made available to the public within a reasonable amount of time. In addition to standard parliamentary procedure, the following special rules shall apply. Please mute your microphone so as to reduce background noise at any time you're not speaking. Prior to speaking and on each occasion, each speaker shall clearly state their name and title for the record, and there shall be no use of the chat feature. All right, that being said, I'm going to call the roll. Bruno Maini. Bruno Maini is, there he is. Ryan Condon.
Here.
Leon Ambrosi.
Here.
Rob Westland.
Here.
Ron Schneider.
Here.
Dominic Panici. Absent. Rick Schultz. I see
Present.
Rick.
Present.
Willa Gresta.
Here.
Georgia Contos.
Here.
And Sarah Stroud.
Here.
We also have Barbara Schellenberg. We're going to start with general public participation. Are there any members of the public that would like to bring anything to the attention of the Planning and Zoning Commission, or make any general comments that are not related to an application before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and is not related to an application that may soon come before the Planning and Zoning Commission? Any members of the public that would like to speak? Once again, are there any members of the public that would like to speak? If not, then we're going to go to item 4, organizational items. Everyone has the 2021 regular meeting schedule. I believe it was sent out with the dates for 2021's regular meetings.
Yes.
Okay, good. Anyone that doesn't have that? Then I would like to accept a motion to adopt the,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
can we discuss April?
Sure, what did you want to discuss?
Okay, so the regular schedule would bring us on April 1st and April 15th. April has, I'll get back to that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Has 5 Thursdays that month. And April 1st is the day before Good Friday. So I don't know if you wanted to switch to the 8th and the 22nd to spread it out more evenly across the month before and the month after, and to avoid that holiday.
That sounds like a good idea to me. Let's
Yeah.
make that, does anyone else have a problem with changing that?
Mr. Ambrosi? No.
All right, then let's make that change and change it to April 8th and 22nd, the second and the fourth Thursday of April.
Thank you, Will. Good call.
At this point, I'd like to accept the motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the meeting schedule for the year 2021 with the changes to April.
Ambrosi, second.
Great, I have a motion and a second. I'll call the roll. Mayini,
Yes.
Condon,
Yes.
Ambrosi,
Yes.
Westland,
Westland, yes.
Schneider,
Schneider, yes.
and Panici is not here.
Normally you just use the 5 members, but that's fine.
It's unanimous. We have a calendar for next year. Number 5 on the agenda is CGS, is a CGS 824 municipal referral. This is a town council referral for a review and report of a proposed town of Monroe discontinuation of a road. That's Old Webb Road, also known as Old Station House Road, pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 13A-49. So we're going to look at this. Will can give us a brief presentation, and then we can decide whether to make a favorable report to the town council on abandoning this road.
Most of you should be familiar with this area. This is at the end of the northern end at 111, just before it intersects with 34. The area on the map that's highlighted in blue is the right-of-way associated with what is known as Old Webb Road or Old Station House Road. If you recall, Monroe Septic straddles this road. Their development of their facilities is on the lower side, and there's supposed to be a vacant lot on the other side. And if you recall, we changed the zone to B2 for this as well as for the road right away a year or two ago. So this is not maintained by the town. There isn't fully definitive information saying the state gave it to us, but back in the 30s when 34 was built, this was old Highway 145, I believe. Obviously, this road got discontinued. There used to be a bridge across the river. That hasn't been there for decades. The town of Newtown does maintain the portion on the other side of the river. The right-of-way serves 3 properties. The 2 are owned by Monroe on either side, and the property in the far back, which is owned by the Wileys. What would happen with a discontinuation should the town council discontinue it? The right-of-way reverts down the middle to the properties on either side and turns into fee simple and merges with those lots. But anyone that is presently using that road, the 3 property owners retain an easement over that area in order to continue their unimpeded access they've been enjoying with it being a road. So that's really it in a nutshell.
Are there any questions from the commission? If not, then I'd like to direct Will to draft a positive report to the town council on this matter.
We'd need you to do that in a form of a motion and vote.
Oh, okay. Well, the chair will accept a motion to,
Okay.
okay. Is that
I
Bruno?
motion to accept oh man, see, Mike, you messed me all up now. I
We
make a
want
motion,
to send a positive report to the town council.
correct, I make a motion to send a positive report to town council about, Old Station House Road.
Okay, I have a motion. We have a second.
Ambrosi second.
I have a motion and we have a second. I'll call the roll. Mayini,
Yes.
Condon,
Yes.
Ambrosi,
Yes.
Westland,
Westland, yes.
No,
Schneider,
it's just you, Mike. Mike,
and
it's just,
O'Reilly, yes.
it's just the 5 members.
That's
on
me
any
anyway.
vote. Sorry, Ron.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'm used to it.
Okay. So it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to public hearings. Number 6 on the agenda is SCP 2020-02, file 1622A 556 Pepper Street. I believe that has been postponed by the applicant until December the 3rd.
Yeah, and I, last night at the Inland Wetlands Commission meeting, I believe they approved his application. Obviously, that has to be distilled down and sent to us. So hopefully we'll have that in time for the next meeting.
Thank you, Will. Moving along, number 7 on the agenda is a public hearing. SDP 2020-01, file number 139, 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence Drive. This was a hearing adjourned from September the 3rd, 2020. Do we have any new business from the applicant?
Well, let me list the exhibits first.
Oh, so we are going to go forward with this?
Yes,
Oh.
Mr. Chairman. Pat
Okay.
Sullivan for the applicant.
Okay, well, please.
Okay, so the additional exhibits since the last adjournment. Exhibit 13, email, letter, and photos from Peter Metropolis. Exhibit 14, stockpile and surface water evaluation from WSP. Exhibit 15, manifest and certificates of conformity by the applicant. Exhibit 16, response to ART comments by the applicant. Exhibit 17, rockhead material acceptance procedure by the applicant. Exhibit 18, project narrative updated by the applicant. Exhibit 19, updated engineering report by the applicant. And Exhibit 20, updated plan set by the applicant. Exhibit 21, hydrological study by WSP. Exhibit 22, postpone notice by the applicant of the hearing. That is all.
Thank
Good evening.
you. And for the applicant,
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Pat Sullivan, and I'm representing the applicant, which is Monroe Land Holdings LLC and Spacely Land Holdings LLC. I think we were last before you in September. We're looking tonight to share with you, present our revised additional information, plan changes, hydrologist report, environmental testing. We would then like to hear from the interveners, and if that works for the commission, that's how we'd like to proceed. We'll give you an overview. We'll listen to what the interveners have to say, and obviously this will continue, and we are still before inland wetlands.
go ahead, Ms. Sullivan.
I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Soley, and he'll start the process.
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Kevin Soley, and I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Soley Engineering. Office is located at 501 Main Street right here in Monroe. I was hoping if someone might be able to make me a presenter so I could share my screen and run through a quick presentation. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, as Pat indicated, we're here this evening to go through a continuation of the public hearing for site development and restoration at 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence Drive in Monroe. So just to orient everyone, here's an aerial of the town of Monroe. The site's located at 64 Cambridge Drive and 4 Independence Drive, which is on the north end of town, off of Pepper Street, part of the Pepper Street Business Park. So Route 25 runs north-south along the western side of town. Pepper Street obviously has a loop, and this is part of the Pepper Street Business Park. So just a little bit closer up, you can see here, Route 25 runs north-south. Pepper Street comes in, turning left onto Cambridge Drive from Pepper, and this is 64 Cambridge and 4 Independence. So just to refresh everyone's recollection, this application is actually stemming from a response to a notice of violation from the Monroe Inland Wetlands Commission for activity that took place on the property by a previous property owner. The property's changed hands in 2019, and at that time, the new owner came in, met with staff, met with the informal discussion with the commission and several meetings with the regulation subcommittee. And then in last fall, the Monroe and the Wetlands Commission issued a violation. We did an analysis of the site. We prepared a response to that violation and filed applications earlier this year to both Inland Wetlands and Planning and Zoning to essentially develop the site. We're proposing a small office building on the property, and then site grading and restoration to address impacts that have kind of taken place on the property over the past several years, and to get the property prepared for future commercial development. So as was read into the record with the exhibits, we provided quite a bit of information from the last time we were with you. We provided a comprehensive response to comments, and this project is a little bit unique. Obviously, it's going through the wetland public hearing process, and through that, there has been multiple layers of peer review. The Southwest Conservation District did a review of the project and made some recommendations. Additionally, so in response to that, we've actually prepared and submitted to you a hydrogeology report prepared by Ken Taylor of WSP, and we've also done quite a bit of environmental testing on the property and provided a significant amount of material regarding sampling and testing of on-site materials, and also quite a bit of information regarding material manifests for any material that had been imported to the property, and obviously the testing results associated with that material. And so we provided a response that included responses to the Southwest Conservation District's comments, also included responses to letters and comment letters provided by an intervener. This application currently has an intervener filed both before Wetlands and Planning and Zoning. So we've done our best to be responsive to their comments as well. And also we provided written responses to comments issued by town staff, both Will Agresta, the Planning and Zoning Administrator, and Scott Schatzlein, the town engineer. So we've made some pretty substantive changes to our plans from the last application, or from the last presentation to the board. Just first on the site plan, we made a number of revisions based on comments from Will and from Scott. We removed some signage, some details from the signage that wasn't permitted, and we added some additional detail to the site plan. This is the previously submitted site plan, and here's our new version. We added a permanent construction entrance in response to Scott's comments, and then some additional detail and revisions to the overall site layout for the proposed 2,300 square foot office building and associated parking down on the southern end of the site, and additional details for wetland markers and things like that. From a overall grading standpoint, we actually made some pretty substantive revisions from the last time we were in front of you. Our initial application proposed to essentially clean up the site, grade it so that it's a flat pad, establish stormwater detention basins to accommodate future development, but then also to create a pretty substantive fill along the northern end of the site to raise the grade, to restore the watershed to the wetlands along the easterly side of the property here. Our initial application proposed actually to raise the grade in this area to an elevation of approximately 482. In response to discussions with this commission, with wetlands, and with staff, our current plan actually significantly reduces that Height of proposed fill, our northerly pad in this location is currently proposed to be elevation approximately 466. And that elevation was established basically looking at the existing edge of excavation along this edge and maintaining the minimal slope necessary to ensure that we can still maintain positive drainage from this pad into this easterly wetland system. The primary goal for our wetlands application is to restore the watershed that has been lost through this easterly wetlands, and the proposed grading in this area allows for that to be restored. Former conditions, there was approximately 9.7 acres of watershed draining to this. After all the site disturbance caused by the previous property owner, that watershed has been reduced to about 2.2 acres. And our proposed plan now actually restores that to provide the same 9.5 acres of watershed to rehydrate this wetland and to considerably improve the functions and values of this wetland system in this vernal pool. Additionally, we also provide additional detail for a proposed impervious liner, which would be placed approximately 6 feet from finished grade within the limits of this, the area shown hatched here. And we provided details for that liner, included in the detail sheets as part of our application. One of the big things is associated with this reduction in height for this proposed northerly portion of the site is it significantly reduces the amount of fill that would be required in order to achieve this project. The initial application required approximately 1.3 million yards of material to be imported to the site. With the revisions and the changes, this project requires approximately 980,000 cubic yards of import material to achieve these grades. So a pretty significant reduction based on our response, our attempt to be responsive to comments and issues and concerns raised as part of it. So from a grading standpoint, just on this is a plan representing the lowest southerly portion of the site. We made a number of revisions to the detention basin in the southeast corner. We've added some additional wetland mitigation and upland enhancement in this area. We also added, again, that permanent construction entrance and a number of other elements in response to Scott's comments regarding our stormwater analysis. We've also been able to actually design our phasing so that in all phases of the proposed construction activity, we're able to maintain and match stormwater flows in all directions so that the site does not create any adverse impact from a stormwater management standpoint, and it's able to maintain pre and post rates of runoff for all storm events analyzed. As you get further north into the site, again, it was revised to reflect the reduction in the overall height of proposed fill through this area. And then as you go further north, this is the initial application with a much higher elevation. This represents the proposed changes and the reduction of that overall pad site to the northern end of the property. And again, able to maintain that positive drainage flow into the watershed, the easterly wetland system. We also made some modifications to our overall phasing plans for our soil erosion control standpoint. We revised primarily phase 3 with some additional detail on how that phase 3 construction would take place with access from Independence Drive. This represents kind of the third phase of the project where all of the improvements and site preparation has been completed along the southerly edge of the property. The proposed office building has been constructed, and then we would just be finishing the final filling along the northern edge of the property. Additionally, we provided revised sections as part of this project because we have done a number of things. We wanted to, understanding the proposed grade, and I think this is a good one that shows it. The proposed grade for the elevation along the north, we reduced that, so that kind of shows a considerable reduction in the amount of fill required. Additionally, there was a lot of discussion and concern regarding the northernmost portion of the property and the presence of some surface water, which is likely groundwater fed and also from just surficial drainage for water that lands on the site and drains toward the lowest edge. And one of the things that we did was we determined based on site historical information and also the results of our hydrogeology report that the assumed groundwater elevation in the northernmost portion of the site is approximately elevation 410 or 411. So what we're actually proposing as part of this application is to ensure that only on-site native material would be placed within that lowest portion of the site to the north. And we provided that detail through both callouts on our plans, but also identified it on our sections as well to show that, only native fill material would be placed to that elevation. And then, that obviously ensures and hopefully addresses some of the concerns regarding potential environmental impacts associated with this activity. And I think that's certainly reinforced with some of the environmental testing, which I'll get into a little bit later. So we revised all of our sections. This is another good example here. You can see the proposed grade previously and our current proposed grade. We've significantly reduced that, also identifying that elevation to where only that native fill material would be placed up to that elevation. One of the other items that we submitted in response to comments from staff was a map clearly identifying all of the waiver requests that were included in our initial application. As the Commission's aware, any site plan application needs to also comply with the conditions of the excavation and fill permit regulations under Section 6. And with those, there are a number of requirements regarding changing the grades of a piece of property within so many feet of a property line, within a yard and things like that. So we prepared a map and a figure that kind of highlighted and showed those areas for the waivers that we are requesting. And there's kind of a number of different areas, so we provided enlargements. We're required to get and let me just zoom in here. Let me see if I can do it. So this site's a little bit unique as we do have a shared property line. This is the joint application between a property at 4 Independence and 64 Cambridge. So, we do require to grade within so many feet of that property line. So waiver requested for an artificial slope greater than 14 degrees to the horizontal within 50 feet of any street up here. And then waiver requested for any change in contour within 25 feet of any property line in this location here. And frankly, if the Commission felt strongly they didn't want to grant that waiver, we'd simply have a big valley through here, which really wouldn't help us achieve our goals of filling the site and then obviously restoring this watershed. And then there's a couple other areas through here. In the southeast corner, we are proposing some grading through here to create this detention basin and do some additional grading and wetland creation. So we do need a waiver here for changing contours within 25 feet of a property line, and then an artificial slope greater than 14 degrees to the horizontal. Let's see. And then in this corner here, we're doing some grading within 25 feet of the property line to establish this detention basin. So we wanted to make sure that the Commission had enough information to clearly understand where the waivers are being requested and obviously why we're requesting those waivers. Next part of the presentation I'm excited to talk about is there was a number of, there was a lot of concern and questions raised regarding the impact to the groundwater and the groundwater tables in the site and surrounding the site based on the historic activities that took place on the property. So the applicant engaged WSP, which is a international well-renowned firm, to come out and do a hydrogeological study and analysis of the property. So part of that project included the installation of a number of wells in the northeast corner adjacent to the wetland systems up on the eastern side of the site. So there was a well installed here, a well installed on the little southern end down here, in addition to a well in the southeast corner. And the purpose of this is we wanted to understand where groundwater stood today and understand if the historical operations at the site and the excavation somehow impacted or depleted the groundwater elevation related to these wetlands along the easterly side. And the good news is actually what the hydrogeologist concluded is that there's actually a separation in water table between the activity in the lowest portion of the site here and the water elevation up along the easterly edge. the well that was installed, well number 2 in this northeast corner, you can see here, the surface elevation of that well is approximately 455, and the groundwater was observed at elevation 430. Now, to put that in context, the mass excavation that kind of took place along 4 Independence and 64 Cambridge here, the elevation at its lowest point is elevation 382. So there's 50 feet of grade change between the groundwater observed in this well and the finished grade at the bottom of the deepest excavation and the deepest cut. Now, addition to that, one of the things that was determined was the assumed groundwater elevation in this area, even after the filling activity, would be approximately elevation 410 or 411. So that still represents that this water table was not impacted as part of this activity, which is good, because one of the concerns was this activity could have potentially impacted or created a rift or a crack which would drain the water table for these larger wetlands. And thankfully, that's not the case. And the report from WSP reinforces that. Additionally, just to provide more context, the well to the south, well number 1, similar elevation is approximately 460. The groundwater elevation is about 429, and the finished grade down here is probably about 426, 428 in different spots. So that actually is also elevated up above the grade for the lowest part of the site along the southern edge. And then the well in the southwest corner, this is an interesting one where there's a number of monitoring wells. There's a non-potable well on site that was used for dust suppression. There was also a well installed back in 2002 when the site was initially looked at for multifamily residential development. And the groundwater elevation observed in 2002 and today was comparable in that this is well 3. Back in 2002, it was measured at 408, and today it was measured at 405. So the overall activities on the property, haven't had a substantive impact to the groundwater plume throughout the area in any substantive way. Next, there was a lot of concern raised, and there has been a lot of concern raised about the historic operations on the site. And there's a abutting property owner who has raised a number of concerns with this commission, with the Wetlands Commission, and with, frankly, any agency they could reach out to. They've called DEEP, they've called the Aquarian Water Company. And just to summarize something again, so DEP has been called on this property, Division of Solid Waste, the stormwater water quality permitting, and air have all come out, done inspections on the property, and they've all determined that there was no action required, and that essentially the site was operating in accordance with DEP's requirements, and there were no actionable items observed. I will also state again for the record, this site has been covered under a general permit for stormwater discharge for commercial activities and a general permit for stormwater discharge for industrial activities for quite some time. The general permit for commercial activities since the site started construction in 2006, 2007, and the industrial permit has been in place, I think, since about 2014. So the site has been covered by DEP permits, and again, DEP came out, did an inspection, didn't find any actionable items, but there was still concern about the ongoing operation and the history. And there was material imported to the property, and there was concern that that material could be hazardous and contaminated, and creating an undue threat or cause for pollution for the groundwater or the surrounding wetlands. So the applicant engaged Derek Jones, who's a licensed environmental professional with WSP, to come out to the site and perform a comprehensive evaluation and testing of the on-site materials and also of the on-site surface water to the northern end. And so that was submitted for the commission's consideration or for the record. And what the conclusions were is that all the on-site material has come back clean. And there is no exceedances that created any cause for concern that the historic operations on the property would create any, there hasn't been any, it hasn't been a toxic landfill or hazardous materials. And obviously we recognize that concern. And frankly, the current owner needed to make sure, and he did his due diligence before acquiring the property, but this further reinforces that the property itself hasn't been contaminated, and there is no evidence on the to the contrary that there is any hazardous materials on the site that would cause any potential concern or environmental considerations for the surrounding areas. Additionally, the surface water that was tested also came back clean, and within all of the well below either non-detect or very minimal levels for any of the concerns from a surface water standpoint. So that report from WSP we feel was prepared again as an attempt to further demonstrate that the site has not been, while there has been material imported to the site, we've provided evidence related to that material, where it came from, manifested indicate that it was clean, and this testing further reinforces that, again, there isn't an environmental concern. Now, there is quite a bit of material on site, and as I talked before, we've indicated we're only going to be proposing to fill this lowest portion of the site with on-site native materials, and there's quite a bit of on-site native materials that have been kind of stockpiled in this location here, and we've been able to verify that there's more than enough volume of material on site to use that and utilize that material within those limits. And additionally, I want to point out as well that as part of this review, the Wetlands Commission has also engaged Russ Dorenzo, who is a geologist and LEP with Arcadis, and he also made some recommendations that only on-site fill and rock cutting should be used to fill the deepest portion of the site, and then that clean fill can be used for the balance. And with that, we also had submitted some revised. Part of this project includes a comprehensive material intake protocol, which is prepared in order to ensure that the ongoing operation and material that's imported to the property can be inspected, deemed acceptable to be brought on the property, meets the definition of DEEP clean fill, but even goes above and beyond that, because as part of that protocol, there are a list of materials that are immediately rejected, and the definition of clean fill from DEP includes natural soil. It includes other concrete, a number of other elements that would be deemed clean fill in accordance with DEP's definition. But it also includes, the third provision is polluted soil. We are not proposing to import any polluted soil on the property. That's very clear and has been established, we believe well established in the intake protocol, and that material would be immediately rejected from the site. And then, so in addition to that, we have that protocol also includes a QA/QC program, which requires additional on-site testing to verify that the material that's been brought to the site, that includes a certification from that operator that material meets the definition of clean fill, but it creates an additional protection, quality assurance, and then quality control to help verify that. Additionally, we also added additional testing parameters and provisions regarding any soil that would come to the property prior to even coming onto the site. So there's additional testing that's required by the operator or the wherever that material is generated from, which again is another way that we can protect and ensure that any and all material that comes to this property would not be deemed hazardous or create any potential environmental concern for the property owner or for any of the surrounding property owners as well. We had also provided some additional details regarding the impervious liner, as I'd mentioned before, and that was just one of the other details that we had shown as part of our revised plans. I think that summarizes the majority of the changes that we have made to our applications. We are still in the process of the Wetlands Commission. We had another hearing last night. We think that we're very close to being through that commission. And again, they had engaged, in addition to the Southwest Conservation District, they had also engaged third-party peer reviewer from Arcadis who's assisting them in their decision-making process. He did come to the conclusion that the filling activity that we're proposing would not have an impact on the wetlands. But obviously this proposed activity also requires approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I may have to log back in here because my computer just timed out. Seems I've been talking for quite a bit. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have. As Pat indicated, and we'd also welcome the presentation from the intervener as well.
Thank you, Mr. Solly. Very informative and quite an improvement, I have to say. I'd like to go to the intervener now.
Well, Mike, I have questions, Mike, before we move
Do you
on.
want to hear the other side first, or do you want to ask your questions first?
Well, I think I have to ask a few questions to find out about a couple things here, and then we'll move on to the
Then,
interview.
let's go to the commissioners first before the interveners. If you want to lead off, Leon, go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, you there?
Yes. Sorry about that. I'm back.
No problem. During one of the meetings that you said that the material that was coming into the site was pretty much authorized by the staff to come into there.
There was as part of our material manifest that we provided, there was one incident, I think in 2018, where the property owner at the time had been consulting with staff and wanted authorization to bring in clean fill associated with a project that the DOT was conducting. And so that, we had provided evidence of that email from staff, basically authorizing that material to be brought to the property based on what DOT was looking to do as part of their project.
Well, I don't think that ever was authorized. And the reason why is because I have that letter that you're referring to. And it says, "Thank you for your inquiry before proceeding. It's under my understanding from our discussion and your email below, material brought into the site from Route 25, Connecticut DOT will be clean fill, and we deposit it in the excavated pit area of 64 Cambridge Drive for sole purpose of filling back the open pit. There is no other use or purpose of it." But it also says here, it says, based on the above, this is acceptable provided that the state or a contractor provides certification of the total amount and attesting to the origin and the content as clean fill. We never got any of that.
Well, I believe that testing was, I believe that testing was included as part of the manifest. So that was, and I'd have to go back and look at that. That was obviously a very voluminous submission.
Well, I can't find any more on this. So, and then I found another letter that it says, this came from DOT. Did you see this in July 24, 2018?
Yeah, I believe that was the same letter from the DOT with the testing that they had to provide in order to
No, this one was
export the material.
No, this was in May, but it says, "Hello, I work for Connecticut and I am contacting you about the above site listed. O&G has requested that the site be a disposal site for clean fill, and I'd like to know from the town whether or not this site is currently in compliance with the town regulations. And will aggressively respond, this site is not. Also, O&G is not the owner or the permit holder of 64 Cambridge. The owner is New England Materials." So when you brought up to the commission that they had some kind of authorization to bring fill onto that site, from what I understand, there is no authorization here, unless you have some kind of other letter where you can show me that there was, because you have a violation of bringing on fill onto that property that you didn't have a fill permit for.
Well, again, we're you know, our primary focus our primary focus with this application is to find a path to move this property forward. And we could certainly spend quite a bit of time about, you know, the historic operations prior to the current owner, but I think it's important to remember that, you know, we're trying to forge a path forward.
Wait a minute, hold on. It's not only the previous owner, the current owner was taken in fill. So it's not just the current, not the previous, nor the current, they both were taken in fill. And the other question I asked you, which I never got, because I don't really want to move too long far on this, is I asked you to send into the town the original elevations, what was excavated out of the property, all the holes that were excavated out of the property, the depth of those holes, so I can calculate how much fill was taken out of that property, or how much material was taken out and how much fill was brought in. I have your manifest about what you brought in, but that doesn't tell me anything. That only tells me what you give me. I would like to know how much material was brought into that property, and if there's extra material brought on the property that we don't have manifest on. And I asked you that in the last meeting, and I checked with staff, and I never got any of that information. Can you tell me why that hasn't come forward?
Well, part of it is we have records of every material that we're aware of, that I'm aware of, that brought onto the property is included and covered underneath those manifests.
That's not the question I asked you. I specifically asked you that I needed the elevations. I needed to know what was excavated off that property. I needed to know the depths of those holes because there was holes filled in on that property. I needed to know all that so that we could calculate out how much material was brought into the property, how much material was removed from the property, how much material was sold from the property, so that we can tell that we have all this manifest that you gave me is legit. That this is probably all legit, but if there's other material that brought on property that Mr. Karp may not even know, then we need to know that. And until that point, we don't even know what's in the holes, because I don't know what they did. Did they dig into those holes, or they just took samplings off the top of those holes?
They did both. They took superficial samples, and they also did some additional investigations in deeper areas.
Borings. How far borings did they go down?
So there is an additional analysis that was recently completed and has not yet been submitted that does show additional testing information and deeper borings as well, and they show where they hit refusal, and they can kind of provide all that information.
And that is in where the fill was already put in and covered over.
Yes.
And you don't have that yet?
The report just came in. It hasn't been submitted to the commission yet.
And so you have all those test holes and where they are and all that kind of stuff that they just did?
Yes.
So we don't have that.
And it's all clean. The updated report was just completed. It has not yet been submitted because we didn't want to submit something right before the hearing, which could potentially cause issues, but we'll provide it provide it right after this meeting, and we provide it for the commission. But again, all it does is further reinforce that the site has been tested and the site is clean.
No, I have all that. And I think that we're trying to come to a way that we can handle taking care of this site. But the other part of the site is that you did hit groundwater. From what I understand, I've been watching the inland wetlands meeting, and you are into groundwater. Is that not true?
No, yes. The deepest portion of the site is where there is standing water. Right. That is likely groundwater fed and also superficially fed.
Have you ever hit any groundwater in those other pieces that were filled?
So, it's interesting. As part of the Wetlands Commission, as part of the Wetlands hearing, there was some somewhat ad hoc testimony. I don't believe so. And based on essentially, as this site was excavated, and I'm going to go through some details here. The elevation in this area here, or this is an older picture where there's actually the crushing plant in operation. This grade is approximately 425, 426, 430 or so. And as the material was excavated through the site, it essentially started to drop down in grade from 428 or so down to about 415 to 410. And in the deepest portion of the site, let me pull up a different drawing. In the deepest portion of the site, they came down to about elevation 411 or 410, and that and they didn't encounter groundwater during this excavation until they hit that elevation, and then that's when when they went deeper down to about 382, that's where some of that activity was within the groundwater elevation. Now on this map, there's a perfect example. You can see a small amount of water in this location here. That is not groundwater based on my opinion from what I've seen, because this isn't below that elevation 410 or 411. It's probably about 414 or 413. But what happens is when it rains and you have this large of an area and this large of a watershed, that water goes to the deepest part of the site, right? It drains to the lowest portion. And what that does is when you're dealing with a site that's predominantly rock, that water is going to sit and it's going to collect and it's going to accumulate until it evaporates. So in a lot of the there's been assertions made that, the evidence of a small pocket of water is evidence of groundwater. And frankly, I don't believe that to be true. And I haven't seen any evidence to support that it is, because when you have a large area that when it rains and it drains to the low spot, that is, you get surface water accumulation. Now, once you get to the most northernmost portion, where that elevation is about 410 or 411 before it drops off, I do believe that is probably what's somewhat tied to groundwater, and I think you can see that also in our sections.
Okay, the other question is, what kind of groundwater site is this?
I believe it's a GAA classification. Yes.
Right, so that's a drinking water, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and according to Arcadis, the person that I guess Inland Wetlands hired, he said you hit groundwater.
Yes, in that deepest part. So let me show you a good section through here. Yes, and it's in the deepest part, as I just said, in the northernmost section, the deepest part, that has groundwater.
How many feet
That's
is
the
that?
groundwater. I think it's about elevation 410.
And what's the elevation? 410. Now, does groundwater change over with a drought and without a drought?
It can, certainly.
It can. And do you know what those dimensions would be, like 10, 15, 20 feet, 30 feet? What would it be? Do you have any idea?
When you're dealing with groundwater plumes in bedrock, I'm not sure, but one of the things that the hydrogeologist looked at, and I'm sure he could be here at the next hearing to testify to this. Again, when we look at wells around the perimeter, a well that was tested in 2002 is essentially at or close to the same elevation as it was tested today in October of 2020.
So he'll probably be at our next meeting, so I can ask him questions.
Of course.
Right, because I mean, we need to find it, because this is a drinking water site, and that basically we have people that are in this area and they're all over this area in town that are on wells. They're not on city water and they're not on, public water. So this is a very sensitive site of what you put in there. I mean, I understand that. I mean, like for a perfect example, what happened in Fairfield, that was supposed to be all clean fill that went in there and all sorts of stuff like that. And now a lot of people are getting arrested down there. So, and the thing is when we approve this, we're not only approving it for Mr. Karp, we're approving it for the site. So if this site is sold, it can continue to go on from somebody else still on the site. Am I right or not right?
No, you're absolutely correct, and I'm glad you brought up Fairfield. That is certainly something that's incredibly cause for concern. There was an article today that it was actually more town corruption than anything else, as there were a number of people who were rearrested today because they were, essentially in on the take. And, that's incredibly disheartening as a resident of Monroe, because, we want to make sure, and this commission wants to make sure that they're doing everything they can to ensure that the right things are being done.
Right.
And I agree with you.
And like I said to you, this approval goes with the site. It doesn't go with the property owner right now. It will stay with the site.
You're
So-
absolutely correct. And
So we need to make sure that we have things in place that as long as we can monitor this site or whatever we have to do to this site and whatever kind of fill we decide to put in this site, that this commission, because this is a 10-year project and this could be approved and you could sell it next month. So, you know, I just want to be, I want to go over this and I want to go over this with a fine tooth comb of what we're going to put in here. And like I said, you're here because of the fill you're taking into the property and because of the over excavating of the property. And that's why we're here, to try to straighten this out. So this is not like a normal application. And I don't want somebody to put like, we're putting stringents on this application because, you know, of what it is or where, you know, this is not just a normal application. This is here to address violations. And that's what this commission's here to handle. And I understand the path that you want to take, but I just want to be very clear because you stated in the commission that before that you had some kind of authorization to bring Phil onto this site, which I could see by this letter that basically, because you never sent anything in, that you really didn't have any authorization even to bring in the stuff in from 25. And on top of it, I believe that you've taken in other material. So that's the concern of this commission. We don't know what's in the hole. That's something. What's that?
well, we
Leon,
and
it's
we
Arnold.
understand that. Go ahead,
Kevin,
for the
can I
record.
speak? It's Arnold Karp for the
Sure.
record. Leon, we have done extensive testing and we have exact manifests of everything that has come into this site. So the concept of we're going to go back and re-examine history and discuss what's there, we have made it all very clear. It has been presented at wetlands. It will be dropped off to P&Z tomorrow. But while there has been over excavation, we are 100% sure that everything there has already been proven by clean. That's why we've had the experts do as much work now as they have and previously as they have. So we're going down a rabbit's hole to discuss what may or may not be there. What is there is clean fill and has all been tested and it has all been manifest on where it has come from.
Okay, well,
And you're right.
And I just want to
Hold on one second. Fairfield is a complete disaster, not by private property owners, but by corrupt municipal employees. Okay? So comparing this site to Fairfield is totally irrelevant to what we are looking to do, which is a restoration and put this back onto the tax rolls, not enrich town employees.
and I understand that. But what I do understand is that we have to make sure that what comes on this site is going to be clean. And I understand you are the owner or the holder of the LLC right now, but that doesn't mean that you don't sell this piece of property and it's turned over to somebody else. And now we have to worry about that next person taking care of and bringing in clean fill. This is something that this commission has to decide, and we have to make sure that we do our due diligence and make sure what we bring onto this site, because we have a responsibility to the residents of the town of Monroe. If for some reason something's brought onto this property and it contaminates the waterway, we are going to be held liable for the approval.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%. And
Right.
any site in the town of Monroe could have unsuitable fill dropped in. The
Is
difference
exactly
is
right.
we have a very strict and very stringent protocol that if you were to approve this, it would actually show it will stay with the land should we ever sell it, change development tact. So the approval doesn't change. This piece will have more safeguards than any other piece in the town of Monroe.
And like I said, the safeguards is only as good as if the town, because this site got way out of hand because we didn't handle this from the get-go. And so this site is way out of hand And so I understand your point and you think, and what you're saying, but we have to make sure that we have everything in place before we approve this. And that's only my opinion. And I don't know
Right,
what the
but
rest of the commissioners feel.
No, I just want to point, Leon, I think your points are very appropriate and very well founded. And I want to say that I think we recognize, you made a point before, this isn't a normal application. You are 100% correct. And we recognize that as well. That's why our application was as complex as it was. We proposed, detailed phasing to show how this activity would take place. We provided detailed timelines on how long it would take to complete each phase. And we provided and we put thought into what policies and procedures needed to be in place to ensure and to protect against exactly what you are talking about. No other application that I'm aware of has included a material intake protocol, which has QA/QC and testing requirements beforehand and certifications from every load of material that's brought to the site. That protocol has been sent to DEP. We have sent that to DEP to make sure that they agree and concur that our measures are sufficient to protect, because it's not only is it potential harm and problem for the community, it's a potential harm and problem for Arnold. Mr. Karp doesn't want to create a Fairfield. He doesn't want, from what I read today, Fairfield's looking $10 million plus just to remediate some of the problems of where the dirty material went. Arnold doesn't want to deal with the remediation problem on this property. He wants to ensure that only clean fill comes on the site, and not just clean fill in accordance with the definition, a restricted version of that clean fill. Because, I think as you'll probably hear from the intervener, they're going to say it's solid waste and this, that, and the other thing. And we believe that's all unfounded. There's all these assertions and claims made that it's a toxic waste dump. It's not. We've tested it. It's come back clean, both the water and the material.
Well, I don't know what the intervener has to say, but what I have to know is that what is brought into this site, that I have to be comfortable that it's not going to contaminate the water supply. That's what I have to be comfortable with. So we have to do our thing. But I mean, you said one time before about the fill being brought in there and that they had approval from the town. Obviously, they didn't have approval from the town when they brought that fill in there because they didn't, do the rest of the stuff they were supposed to do. I guess O&G tried to apply to something from the state of Connecticut, which I don't know, but I guess the DOT, you have to get a permit from the DOT to bring clean fill in?
no.
Why would this Connecticut DOT that requesting disposal of clean fill, why would the DOT reach out to the town?
DOT, this is Will Agresta, since I'm the author of that letter. DOT's request, as I understood it, is they wanted to understand if that site was an acceptable disposal place. Because O&G was operating the site on behalf of New England Materials, and I guess they were doing some coordination between each other, and DOT was doing, I assume, their diligence in finding out if that was an appropriate site from the town's perspective. And that's why I told them, no, it was not.
Okay.
And I don't want, I certainly don't want, if I made a statement, at the last hearing regarding that, I certainly don't want that to be misconstrued or somehow, interpreted that there was a blanket approval to do this. I'm not saying that there was. There were activities completed on this property that were outside of the bounds of every permit and approval granted for it. We acknowledge that. And again, we're trying to make a path forward.
I understand that, but when I questioned it about the fill, basically it was said that there was by the staff an approval to bring that fill onto the site. And so about reading this, obvious there wasn't an approval. So I just want to be clear on that, because I did ask that question and you did relate to me that there was an authorization from the staff, not from planning and zoning, because we discussed that, and that the staff, so what do you call it? And I just want to be clear that it wasn't. And I just don't want to be told something and then find out that it's not true. Because I had to go back.
Again, I certainly didn't mean to mislead or to misrepresent anything. I just remembered seeing in that material there was a letter authorizing that particular thing. I'm not saying there were approvals for it. I'm not saying the site was ever approved for the activity that took place. We're acknowledging that it wasn't.
Okay.
And our focus is trying to find a path forward.
Right. And are you going to bring in the material that I asked for the last time? Because I asked the
So,
staff like for the last 3 or 4 weeks if that ever came in.
This is a very challenging thing to provide. We can provide you with volumes, Leon, but you got to understand that the site, there is a site like this from an activity standpoint is very unique because there's a tremendous amount of overburden on the site above the rock that was removed and stockpiled prior to getting to the rock to actually drill and blast and process. The activity on the property and the actual rock crushing operation results with about 40% waste of screenings, which are created by the crushing operation. So there are incredible volumes and mountains of piles of material that is the byproduct of the crushing operation, and that's stockpiled in various locations throughout the site.
Which is stone dust, right?
Yes, stone dust, right. So you can see in this picture, there's a very large pile here. That's stone dust.
Are you going to put that stone dust into the water?
That's an on-site native material. That's clean. That's actually used for environmental fill jobs. We wouldn't put it into a standing body of water, but it could certainly be used and has been tested to be used as fill. It's clean. It's native material.
So it's okay.
So it could be.
I just want to be clear on this. I just got to get clear on all this stuff, so Kevin, before we move on to the next thing. You think it's okay to put that in at that thing in the groundwater table? You think it's okay to put stone dust in there? I differ on that. I differ on that because I've done a little research on stone dust, and so let's differ on that. There's certain things that could be in stone dust because it's a by-material of crushing rock, which is granite. Is there silicon in stone dust?
There maybe. I'm not sure. We'd have to test it for that specific.
Right.
But even that being the case,
it's not native material. It's been crushed. It's not. Believe me, it's not. I think I know a little bit about this, but I'm not 100% sure. But I'm going to research the stone dust deal.
Well, that's fine. And actually, we weren't and are not proposing to fill the deepest part of the site up to elevation 410 with stone dust. There is on-site native material that had been stockpiled here in this location, which provides more than sufficient volume to fill this to come up and out of the water table. And this material was also sampled and tested, and this is all on-site native material. So anyway, so I can give you some of these volumes, but it's when you're dealing with material like this, if we were to look at the total amount of material that was excavated from the property, you're taking solid rock that then gets processed and crushed to 3/8 stone or 1 1/4 stone. And the swell factor associated with an excavation is considerable. Additionally, you also have a compaction factor when you import material. So I can provide you with a number of different volumes, but I'm concerned that the mathematical exercise that would be taking place after that is somewhat going to be an exercise of futility because of all the different history that's taken place on this property since 2006.
Yeah, well, that. Okay, well, maybe we can figure it out a different way. How much material was sold off that property?
Well, we can probably provide that. And again, this property was, there were quarterly reports submitted to the town for this property, I think going all the way up through the fall of 2000 or maybe the second quarter of 2018. And every one of those reports quantified exactly how much material had been removed from the property.
You have that, I'm sure, because you had a scale house there, right?
Yes. Yep.
I'm sure that you can retain all their records.
We can certainly try.
And,
The
And-
only
and
reason why I'm saying is this, is as I'm not saying anything about your applicant and about what he has done, what he is doing now. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I'm saying I need to know the history of that site. And I want to know what the history of that site is, how much material was brought in, how much material was removed. I need all this stuff. I mean, how much the material was sold. And so-
Can I just ask how that pertains to the current application?
It's because I need to know if there's material brought on that site that we don't have manifest for.
Well, we've tested it. We've tested all the
Listen,
material on the site.
Listen,
There were
I-
8 borings. There were 8 borings provided through this area that went a total of
I
40
haven't
feet
seen
before it hit
any of
bedrock.
those borings, and I don't know how deep they are.
Okay.
I don't know. I
Okay.
haven't seen any of that.
And
I
that's-
don't have any of that.
And that's fair. So let us provide the additional analysis which was just completed, and then we can review it again at the next hearing, and we can certainly try to go through all these questions and concerns. We share those
To
concerns.
tell you the honest God's truth,
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of what you call clean fill that wasn't clean fill. Now, if it was been removed from the site, grant you, but I've seen pictures that didn't show as being clean fill. I seen rebar, I seen other things and all stuff like that. I've seen pictures. So, when you come up with a clean fill, it's one thing, but it's, I'm just saying to you is we don't know what's in the hole.
but we do.
No.
But
So
you,
what we're saying is we do, and I want to say this too. You're absolutely right. There's material on that property that needs to be processed before it can be placed, and we've acknowledged that. We acknowledge that there is construction debris that has been brought to the property that meets the definition of clean fill, that's inert, that doesn't propose any environmental risk to the environment or the water table or anything else, but it needs to be processed. Metals need to be removed from it, and that.
But in your other alternative, you said to me that you weren't going to process that material anymore on the site, that you were going to just bring in clean fill and put it in the thing and not do any processing on the site.
No, that's
clear? Is that what you said to me or not?
No, not at all. And actually, our detailed phasing plans that were provided, they define every phase of this project will require the processing of the material that's been brought onto the property because it has to be processed. Metals or any other deleterious materials have to be removed, and the material has to be processed in order to be created in a way that it can be placed structurally into the hole, that it can be placed into the fill.
I got that. And how are you going to process that material?
They'd have to have there'd be a crusher on site that would have it would go through screens with magnets to remove all that material. And then it would be then placed in the hole. And let me pull up one of our SEC plans, for phase 1. For here's an example. We identified from a detailed phasing standpoint during phase 1, this would be the material processing area. As material is brought in, it would be put in bins for inspection and for testing and for QA/QC. And as that material gets put through the processing facility, there'd be stockpiles, which would then get picked up and either put in bins or put directly into the rear portion of the site to be placed as part of the fill operation. We've identified for each phase where that processing would take place, where the bins would be, and how that material would happen.
It's pulverized.
Well, no, I have that. So you're going to have a crusher on the property.
Yes.
Okay. Is it going to be contained in the building, or is it going to be out in the air? That's another thing I need to know.
It would be out in the air, and we identified where on site it'd be housed and where that processing would take place. And that's not inconsistent with any other site that's under construction. All that, this isn't an operation. This isn't an operation where we're processing and putting material on the ground to be sold. This is an application to simply import material.
This is a 10-year project you're asking for, right?
Yes.
Okay. So 10 years of a crushing operation, right?
10 years of an earthwork operation, of a filling operation.
What is it? Are you using a crusher on the property?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Leon. You bring up some interesting points. We're going to go ahead to Commissioner Mayini.
I personally would like to listen to the intervener before I ask my questions.
Okay. Commissioner Condon,
Same.
Westland.
The same here.
All right, then I guess we can go to the intervener. And who do we have presenting information for the intervener?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport with the law offices of Green and Gross, and I appear before you this evening on behalf of Peter Metropolis, trustee, the owner of a abutting property to the property at 64 Cambridge and 4 Independence. I guess I should state out front that the intervener is not generally prepared to present this evening. I can sort of get into that as to why that is, and I'm happy to offer some comments, and we can probably offer some materials to the commission this evening.
You don't have to present if you don't want to. This is your opportunity to make any presentations that you'd like to, but it's not a requirement tonight.
Well, I would like to just offer a few comments, if I may, and I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I know that I understand the commission is eager to hear from us, and we're eager to share our case. You know, this past Tuesday, Arcadis, as Mr. Soley had indicated, Arcadis presented a written report to the Inland Wetlands Commission, and I'd be happy to share it with this commission. But amongst the conclusions by Mr. DiRienzo were that the plan that's before the commission tonight is flawed. He indicated in the report that it is overly ambitious. He indicated that the timeline is too long, and he indicated that there are feasible and prudent alternatives. And that report was the subject of considerable discussion last evening at Inland Wetlands. And as I understood it, and there was quite a bit of discussion, and our ecologist George Logan made a presentation, and there was quite a bit of discussion with the applicant and with the commission. In your record is a letter from Mr. Logan where Mr. Logan poses a number of questions, and those questions were posed at Inland Wetlands as well. As I understand it, the applicant, well, first of all, the applicant had not fully responded to those in the context of the Inland Wetlands application. As I understood it, last night the applicant committed to responding to those requests for information. So, and you know, we had a meeting till midnight last night, and I had concluded that I was sort of surprised that the applicant wanted to go forward, as there are still so many open questions at Inland Wetlands. But a few comments that I wanted to offer for the commission are the following. First of all, and I know the applicant has heard me say this before, and maybe this commission had heard me say this before. While we appreciate that the applicant acquired the property in May of 2019, you know, presumably the applicant acquired the property with open eyes, understood the condition. I heard Mr. Soley say that at the time that the applicant acquired the property, the applicant had conducted due diligence, and he actually stated that tonight. And I've also heard Mr. Soley say several times, and I think, and I know he means it, that the applicant is looking for a path forward, and we appreciate that. But the site condition is the site condition, and the applicant is, the application really deals with the site. It deals with the property, it deals with the condition, and it deals with a condition that has this 14-year history. And in acquiring the site, certainly the applicant recognized that they were going to carry that 14-year burden in their path moving forward. something that did strike me tonight is that the applicant indicated that there is some additional testing that the applicant now has. And I am quite concerned about that as the intervener. It is amongst our claims, and we've had sort of an interesting dialogue as to whose jurisdiction what subject falls into. And we've spent quite a bit of time focused on the filling on the site. And it's our position, and I wrote a letter to the Inland Wetlands Commission, that the filling is relevant to the jurisdiction of the Inland Wetlands Commission because of its effect on the groundwater, the drinking water and such. And I did provide a letter to the commission on that. And I've been told several times that the sort of the filling activities are zoning, and those fall within your jurisdiction. And so we look forward to addressing those issues with you. I do have some photographs, and I'm happy to share them. I have not put them into the record before, and I don't know if the applicant would prefer that I file them, for in advance of the hearing on the 3rd. I'm happy to do that. If the commission would like to see them tonight, I'm happy to share some photographs of some filling that we are very concerned with. But once again, getting back to where I started, there's apparently some additional test results available, and those would be certainly critical to our presentation on the filling issue. The applicant has committed at wetlands to answering the questions that Mr. Logan has posed before Inland Wetlands and before this commission, and we would like that information before we proceed. I am happy to, though, show some photographs to the commission if the commission would like at this juncture. I mean, that's up to you.
What are they photographs of?
They're photographs of the northern portion of the site and photographs that we have filed with Inland Wetlands, and they show some areas of focus that we are very concerned about in terms of the nature and extent of the filling.
Hi, Mr. Green, this is Commissioner Maini. Photographs are great, thank you. I'm just wondering if you have anything to say with your findings. Do you have any findings? I mean, I kind of hear you talking, but I kind of not hearing on.
Yeah, that's fair. And the answer is we have some findings, but amongst the claims that we have is that the testing protocol has been inadequate because there are areas of the site that have had massive amounts of fill deposited, and there was no testing by WSP or anyone else to our knowledge to date of those areas. And we wanted to show where this massive filling has occurred and compare it to the WSP test holes. And if there are more results available, maybe the applicant has that answer. I don't know.
Okay, so you don't have anything.
I don't today. No, I don't have a presentation tonight on that.
Okay, so all right, all right.
Well, let's have Mr. Solly present his material when it's available. Hopefully that'll satisfy Mr. Green.
Yeah, Mr. Green, can you have some material for us the next time you come?
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to present on December 3rd, is it?
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
No, because I'm kind of waiting to ask questions on something that you have, but you have nothing. And if you can have it by next meeting, because I'll be honest with you, I'm a commissioner that doesn't want to keep having these same discussions 100 times over. I don't want to go in circles. It gets really old really quick. That's just with me.
Understood.
Mr. Solly wants to move forward. You potentially have something. Today you have nothing. I just kind of want to get to some sort of conclusion with this.
Well,
I'll be honest with you, if you look at the left side of my head, there's no hair over here.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with this project. And I want to, Leon brought up some amazing points. Kevin, again, I learned a long time ago, there's 3 sides to every story. There's Kevin Solly's side, there's Mr. Green's side, and we need to figure out what the truth is. Okay. So right now, I only have Kevin Solly's side. Mr. Green has no side, and I can't figure out the truth yet.
All right,
Please,
so
Mr. Green, when you come back on the 3rd, have something for me, please.
we will, but I would ask then that, A, if there's more test results from WSP, that we be provided with them now or by any other consultant. I would ask that.
Kevin, can you give Mr. Green some WSP testing results or something?
Every material that we've submitted to any commission, we've copied Joel Green on every submission. So you will absolutely get whatever gets submitted for the record. Yes.
Thank you.
In advance of the 3rd, though.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, okay. So before the 3rd, can you get him whatever he needs, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And also the responses to Mr. Logan's questions that are in the record.
All right, thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
I would.
Green.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
That I would. Well, I would just add that, you know, Mr. Logan is a soil scientist and is opined on wetland related issues. But we'll certainly provide our response to this commission as well for their consideration. But wetland issues are wetland issues, and P&Z issues are P&Z issues.
Yeah, Kevin, I believe that Arcade has said that it's a P&Z issue about filling that hole in the groundwater.
He did, because he concluded that the placement of the fill will have no impact on the wetlands. So he basically said the Wetlands Commission shouldn't have any opinions on that because it won't impact the wetlands, and that it's up to Planning and Zoning Commission to look at it from a planning and zoning application standpoint.
Do we know why that wetland they were talking about? I don't know if it was wetlands 1 or 2 or 3, the one that where the water drained out. Do we know why that drained out of there?
Well, it's not a question of draining. Well, we did. It's not a question of draining out. It's a question of a reduced contributing watershed.
I don't think that's what he said. He said it got drained somehow. I believe that's
No,
what
he definitely said that there was over 9 acres of contributing watershed to that area previously, and now there's only 2 acres of watershed draining to that wetland. So it's the lack of surface water flow is what's caused that wetland to lose its high quality and high function. So that's the whole purpose of our application. We're trying to restore that watershed to rehydrate that wetland, so it can become vibrant again.
And their concern is that it may only have a 30% chance of ever reviving again.
So we went through that at depth because Mr. Dorenzo, he questioned if the rehydration was going to be effective. And it isn't a question of if the rehydration is going to be effective once our grading is completed, because you know, it's an engineering exercise. You grade a site and you direct the water to the low spot, and that water gets there. His concern is what could happen to, you know, the impact to the wetland from 2014 as it's been more and more dehydrated. His concern is that over the next 10 years that it's going to take for us to physically place the material to restore that watershed. His concern has to do with if over those next 10 years, those wetlands will continue to degrade so that once we restore the water, it's not going to be vibrant. We've had a number of discussions with the commission, and we discussed that with them last night about how to rehydrate that wetland during that 10-year process. And actually, in response to the discussion last night, we're working on some other alternatives on how to address that. And Mr. Dorenzo even suggested, you know, we've proposed dewatering of the site during the 10-year period and pumping that water up to that wetland. He had some concerns about the phosphorus and nitrogen levels of that water to be dewatered. But we actually have some testing for other superficial rainwater through the site as part of our special general permit that does not have phosphorus or nitrogen concerns. He also discussed possibly pumping into those wetlands using a bedrock well, which is an alternative that we're currently looking at, so that during the duration of the fill operation, we can rehydrate that wetland with something else. So there's a number of ways we can address Russ's concerns, Mr. Dorenzo's concerns. We're working through that, and we're confident and we're hopeful that that'll address his concerns. But again, the filling component, he said, was not a wetland issue because it wasn't going to impact the wetland. We still believe placing the fill to restore the watershed will ultimately achieve our goal of restoring that wetland.
Right, but we have to de-water that site, right, when you're filling it.
Leon, I don't want to rehash the
No, I'm not rehashing it.
wetlands
No,
meeting.
Mike.
I want to move this forward tonight. We're not going to stay until midnight going over what was already done in the wetlands. Can we please move this forward, Leon?
No. As me being a commissioner, Mike, I need to get the questions so I can have my next answers, but you know what, if that's what you want to do, I'll stop to the next time.
Thank you. Mr. Green, do you have anything else to add tonight?
Only if the commission would like to see some of the photographs tonight, or whether you'd like me to defer, that's up to you.
I'd like to see you hand those in, yes, to the staff, and we'll bring that to the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Commissioner Condon, do you have any questions?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Westland, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, more just a statement. You know, in my opinion, we as a commission, we need to clearly delineate our expectations for a course of action going forward with this property. It's been made clear to us that you're not in the aggregate mining materials distribution business, but a quarry's been purchased with a business office and a weigh station. And because of that, I'm not a fan of supporting any effort to continue to excavate on this property. I will support filling this land with proper oversight through manifests to create, you know, a platform for future development. I don't think that we need to complicate this. And I think that we're starting to get to the point where we're just where we're going in circles on it. It doesn't need to be this complicated.
Well, I agree. And if you don't have any other questions, I have a couple of questions.
I'm all set.
All right, Mr. Solly, what is the purpose of the impervious liner, and where will that go?
So the purpose of the impervious liner is, so we're proposing to establish grades that will allow for surface drainage into this wetland system. The purpose of the impervious liner is to ensure that, you know, when this is a stabilized lawn and seeded area, we want to make sure that when it rains, water isn't going to infiltrate or exfiltrate beyond the wetland and just go straight down. So what we've done is we've proposed an impervious liner so that even if water doesn't just run across the surface and does infiltrate and exfiltrate down into the, you know, below the surface, it'll hit that liner and then run along that liner, which will have a positive slope to the wetlands, so that, you know, surface water is going to go this way. Any water that doesn't go, that doesn't run along the surface, that goes into the underlying soils, will also get captured by that liner and direct that water toward this wetland. And the hatched area shown on this plan depicts the limits of that liner, and that is essentially the entirety of the new watershed we're creating to hydrate that wetland.
What is the liner made out of?
So we provided a detail for that liner, and it would be we provided a couple options. It would either be a 6-inch layer of an impervious fill material, which has to have a very specific sieve profile. So it has to have, you know, at least, 35% passing the 200 sieve, which is a very high fine content material. So that it's essentially like a clay liner, so that the water's not going to go through it, it's going to run along it. Alternatively, it could be a mix of sand and bentonite clay, or it can just be a 40 mil polyethylene liner. So we're kind of creating a number of options that it can be, so that we can make sure that fill gets to where the water gets to where it has to go.
Thank you. And your restricted version of the clean fill, you're not going to include soil that was previously polluted. Do you have any other items that you will exclude from the DEEP's definition of clean fill?
Well, one of the things that we're also doing is we're not proposing to fill, you know, do any large scale or wholesale fill with any asphalt fragments or millings. You know, the DEP says that asphalt fragments greater than 4 inches meet the definition of clean fill. But, we're not proposing to do any wholesale fill operations with large quantities of asphalt fragments. That being said, there may be, a random or small fragment of asphalt in a larger fill source. That would be okay, but we aren't proposing to do any wholesale filling of asphalt. And actually, the manifest that we provided, or the revised protocol, also has a list of automatically rejected materials, is Exhibit C, and then it has a very restrictive acceptable materials on there, and that's natural soil, rock, stone, sand, gravel, clean concrete, ceramics, and brick.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open this up to the public. If there are any members of the public that have not already spoken who would like to speak, please make yourselves known at this time. Any members of the public that would like to speak or ask any questions? Hearing none, then I'd like to give it back to Mr. Soley for any concluding comments for tonight.
I just want to say we really appreciate the commission's consideration with this one, and we know it has been, and it will be a little bit of a lengthy process just as we continue to work through the Wetlands Commission. I think at this point, as I mentioned, there's some additional information we can submit to you, but we'd probably like to continue the hearing until we have a little bit further clarity and direction from the Wetlands Commission. Our next meeting with them is on December 9th. So at a minimum, I'd probably request to continue this hearing until the 17th, your next meeting on the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. Sully. This hearing will be continued until the 17th.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just so that we're all clear, a resubmission of any materials need to be in the office on Tuesday, December 8th.
Great. We can certainly meet that.
Okay.
Thank you, Will.
Okay, moving on to the next public hearing. Item 8, I'm not quite sure if this is going forward tonight, is SEP 2020-01, file number 1621A, 390 Monroe Turnpike, McDonald's Restaurant. Are we moving forward with that tonight? Are there any speakers for the applicant on that tonight? All right, it does not appear so, then we will adjourn that as well. Item number 9 on the agenda, RAA 2020-04, file number 1011E, Stevenson Lumber. That has been postponed by the applicant until 12/3/20. That brings us to number 10 on the agenda, RAA 2020-05, file number 1012E, Mixed Use Development. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission's text amendment, which we will continue tonight. At our last meeting, we heard from the public, and the public had several comments. They would like...
Before you move on, I would just like to read the added exhibits.
Yes, please, go ahead, Will.
We have 2. Exhibit 10, Exhibit 10, a public comment letter from Hans Schumans, and Exhibit 11, a P&Z ART memo. That's it.
Okay, so I would like to get the commissioners' feelings on this, on these items. Now, we're not going to take a vote. I'd just like to see which way you're leading on these 8 items that we have before us on the application review team comments that was sent out this week. So I'm going to go through all of them one by one. And I'm going to ask each commissioner also one by one how they're leaning on these, so that the ones that we get a feeling that we want to move forward with, we'll add to the text amendment, and then we'll make a final draft to be reviewed and to be voted on at our next meeting. Everybody understand that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you mean we'll continue the hearing and reconvene the hearing, and whether you close the hearing next time?
We'll reconvene the hearing with a final draft, correct?
Right, correct. We're not sure if we're closing until the future.
Right. So the first item was, well, let's start with the last item, number 8. There was a apparent error. LOR should be deleted. Number 7, roof pitch. I think I got the impression from the last meeting that mansard roofs were acceptable to the majority of the commission. Is that true? Thank you. So let's go to number 6 then. 2.5 stories versus 3 stories. At this point, our amendment requires 2.5 stories as a maximum, or 35 feet. Now that's the same through all the residential districts and the business districts. The public comment suggested that we allow a taller building if we felt, in our opinion, that such modification would improve building design and location. Now, I hear from staff doesn't really recommend waivers in general because they have to be very carefully crafted and very carefully designed. So I'd like to get the opinion of the commissioners. Do you really want that possibility that we would allow a taller building? I think they specifically asked for that in relation to a loft, if there was a loft in the building. So we're talking now about allowing a building that is taller than 35 feet and perhaps limited to if the resident has a loft.
And I want to be clear, if it is a loft and the floor area is less than 50% of the floor below it, that will be deemed a half story.
Right, now is that acceptable to us, or do we want to put that in our regulation? Commissioner Mayini?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm just, Will, are you going to keep track of this?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Condon,
I want to stay at 2.5 stories.
Commissioner Ambrosi,
I'm fine with 2.5 stories.
and Commissioner Westland.
2.5 stories.
All right, it looks like we're going to stay at 2.5 stories, or 35 feet.
Ron Schneider, you have no say.
Ever.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ron.
Okay.
I didn't realize that this was not limited to the seated commissioners. Thank you, Bruno. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ron.
Oh, I agree with everyone. 2.5.
Thank you.
I'm gonna just put myself back on mute.
Feel free just to go off mute anytime. All right, great. So now we'll get back to 5. Now I'm a little confused on 5, I have to say. Will, can you just walk us through number 5?
Yes, sure. So the original draft said, and this is sort of language that came from other parts of our code, that the rent includes several items. And one of the items that it would include was some of the utilities. The public comments suggested that, that doesn't allow them to have individual, meters and whatever that the individual unit owners would pay for. Because in this development, not everything's going to be the affordable units. It's going to be a mix. So one, you could leave it that way, and the affordable units, the rent would include those utilities, and that would be the responsibility of the owner. Or what the suggested change is, and I know the language is maybe hard to get, but what it's saying is that the affordable units will rent for a price that meets the standards for affordability, and in considering the housing costs, which is what HUD uses and what the state uses for defining affordability, would be factored into what the appropriate rent would be. So the way it's written in the alternative is that it doesn't mean that the owner pays the utilities. What it says is they're going to look at what rent could go for, what the utilities are, and the other costs to determine really what the rent would be. So in a way, the rent would probably be a little less because the tenant has to pay for his utilities. But he could pay for them separately with the utility company. Because otherwise, if you don't factor those things in, it's not really affordable. Because if you don't factor in the cost of living for housing, you could price somebody out even though they're eligible otherwise. So this kind of satisfies, I believe, what the public comment wanted, and at the same time satisfies the requirement to keep them affordable. Is that understood?
Yeah, so then I'd like to poll the commissioners. Do you want to go ahead with Will's recommended changes then? Which the recommended change is that the utilities are included. Is that correct, Will?
They're included in the when someone has the affordable unit up for rent. The way to determine what's affordable factors in the rent, the utilities, and the income eligibility standards. And together, that then factors in the rent. So if the utilities are $100 a month, the rent would be priced accordingly so that it would still be affordable to that person, meaning 80% medium income, because they have to pay something to the utility and they pay the other to the rent.
All right, so which are you recommending, Will?
I would go with the added language that I added in. It's a little clearer and it takes care of a few other things. And it accommodates the ability for the owner of the apartment complex to do either or.
Okay, thank you. How do the commissioners feel about that? Are we okay with that, going with Will's language? Yes?
Yes.
Are there any no's?
I don't have a problem.
Thanks. We'll have another chance to comment. The next is unit size, number 4. The current draft amendment sets the apartment size at 1,000 square feet. We did talk about possibly increasing it to 1,100 square feet. And the public comment requested a larger size as well. It looks like Will's comment says that the median size multifamily unit is 1,057 square feet. So I would like to get everyone's opinion once again about unit size. Should we stay with the 1,000 square feet or go to the 1,100 square feet? I'm going to go through the roll on this one. This is more important. Bruno.
I'm okay with 1,100 square feet.
Okay. Condon.
Yeah, I'm good with 1,100.
Ambrosi.
I'm good with the 1,100.
Westland.
1,000 feet is plenty.
And Ron Schneider.
Hey! I'm fine with the 1,100. doesn't really matter.
And I'm okay with the 1100 also. Okay, we're going to go to 3, alternate access entrances. The current draft amendment limits residential apartment access to a central interior shared access. That's basically so it doesn't look like a motel. So, and it's a safety issue as well. Now that's sort of tied to number 2, which is requesting residences on ground floor or below ground floor. So I think these kind of go together. And I thought the feelings was against that last time, but I want to go again through the commissioners so we can get an idea of how you're feeling now. So this would be tied together pretty much. If we allow residences on the ground floor, then we can talk about they're going to possibly need separate access. So on residences on the ground floor, with or without separate accesses, Bruno.
No residents on ground floor.
Ryan.
Same, residents only above businesses.
Leon.
Like I said, I didn't have a problem if it was in the rear of the building, but I'm good either way.
Either way. And Westland?
No residences on the ground floor.
And Ron?
Yeah, I agree. Nothing on the ground floor.
Nothing on the ground floor. All right. I could go either way, but it looks like we're moving away from that. And then finally, number 1. Commercial residential density. Now, originally we were thinking 50-50 commercial residents. They asked a 60-40 split. And I think that was to allow public spaces on the ground floor, pretty much to allow that not to be counted as residential. Versus just allowing stairwells and that kind of thing not to be counted as residential. Staff is recommending that we allow them to exclude basement maintenance, utility cold storage areas, and a small access lobby area. However, not a larger area such as a common space or a rec room or that. So how are we feeling on that? Do we want to stick to the 50-50 or do we want to allow 60% residential? Mr. Maini?
50-50.
50-50. Mr. Condon?
50-50.
Mr. Ambrosi?
50-50 is good.
And Mr. Westland?
I'm a firm 50-50.
And Mr. Schneider?
Yeah, sure. 50-50.
Which one, 50-50 or 60-40? It's getting close here.
Is it? Who's got 60-40?
Nobody.
Well, you haven't heard from me yet.
We've heard enough.
So what is it going to be, Ron?
I'm good with 50-50. That was the original plan. This is the first time I'm realizing. So 60-40 would be 60 up top. So there's a common area. Then you'd go left to one, right to another. Is that no? It's the other way, 60-40. Oh yeah, then 50-50 for sure.
All right. It looks like we're getting a picture of how the commission is leaning. All right, since this is a public hearing, I'm going to go to the public now to see if there are any members of the public that would like to ask any questions or make any comments.
Yes, this is Hans Shermans.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you? Yeah, I just don't know how to get 50-50 if you're charging the stairway and the access to the residential on the ground floor to residential. I just don't see how that's logically possible. If you have the two walls to the building, the two outside walls, you're charging residential is inside the commercial area. So you're subtracting, automatically the residential is going to have more than 50% just by doing that. The other thing is some of these regulations were designed to take corrective action on apartments that already exist within the corridor. And I know driving up 25 that there are at least half a dozen or more apartments that exist right now within commercial buildings. And some of those apartments are, in fact, ground floor apartments. So I don't know how the commission is expecting to make those apartments legal, but you know, there's going to have to be a lot of changes to existing apartments if the regulations stay as is. So my main concern with it doesn't have to be 60-40. I just didn't want the access to the residential space through the commercial to be counted as residential, because I just don't see how it can be 50-50 then. So just count it as common area. Don't count it towards either commercial or residential, so that we can still have 50% occupied residential and 50% occupied commercial. I'm fine with that. That's it. And I'm for this, getting the amendment passed as soon as possible.
Okay, well, thank you. I think you do make a good, he does make a good point there. Are there any commissioners willing to change the way they're leaning just to allow stairwell access on the main floor not to be counted as residential?
No, sir.
I agree with that. That's fine with me.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either, Mike.
As long as it's written that it's stairwell access or stairway access, I'm okay with it. I just don't want, you know, what could be a commercial unit in the bottom to become a rec room that's only going to be accessed by the residents up top, because that's what I want to avoid.
All right, write that into the code, Will?
Sorry?
Can we write that into the code?
Absolutely, that's what we'd have to do. So that's sort of the second bullet on number 1.
Okay,
And so I can draft up something that would keep it minimal.
okay.
All right, are there any other members of the public that would like to comment? All right, if not, then I think Will got all the notes. So we'll adjourn this hearing.
I'm sorry, there was excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
There was one other item that we discussed at the last meeting, which was the covered walkways, that we wanted to promote covered walkways in front of commercial spaces in any development, and to have those covered walkways count as part of the commercial space in order to do that. We just felt that having a covered walkway in front of a store promotes people to walk throughout the development into the commercial spaces. Many of the commercial spaces in town right now do have covered walkways in front of them.
So you would like the covered walkway to count as commercial? Is that correct?
Yes.
That's covered in the third bullet point of number 1.
I must have missed that. How does the commission feel about allowing the covered walkways to remain as commercial?
Now, I want to be clear, the covers aren't, the second floor of the covering isn't residential, right? This is like a kind of freestanding, not freestanding, but its own covering. We're not looking at having the second floor kind of branch out, right?
Well, that's what it would do. That's what it would allow.
It would allow an overhang, in other words?
Well, it's skewing the percentage no matter what you do, because the outside is the outside. It's not really commercial space. It's just the sidewalk. And in theory, if you can have the area outside under a roof counted as commercial space, that increases how much commercial floor area there is, even though you're not getting anything out of that floor area. And it's going to just go right up into the apartment above it.
I don't know how we can not count the inside stairwell, but count the pathway up to the building as commercial.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. the commercial space the windows could either come out to the edge of the building, and that would be fully commercial space without a covered walkway, or we could just inset the windows or the storefront so that there is a covered walkway. We're not the commercial area, we could put the windows at the edge of the building just as any other building, but we feel that bringing the windows in leads to more of the type of atmosphere that I think Monroe is looking for in a commercial space.
I'm okay with covered walkways. I just don't see the reasoning why the covered walkway should count as part of the commercial area.
The more commercial, the more residential.
It's not commercial. A covered walkway is exterior outdoor space. It's the sidewalk you walk in front of the store. It is not commercial space.
Yeah. So we can allow covered walkways without counting it towards commercial space.
Covered walkways are permitted. There's no prohibition of covered walkways.
Well,
Where you going?
Okay.
and I'm okay with that.
Are there any other comments from the public? All right, if not, then I think we can direct Will to go ahead and amend the text amendment and bring it back to us at our next meeting. And so we will adjourn item 10,
December 17th.
December 17th. And everybody will be prepared to vote on it at that meeting. Correct?
What about December 3rd? You can't do it by then?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the December 3rd meeting. Sorry. The December 3rd meeting. And Mike, again, we're going to reconvene the hearing. Should you close it, then you can deliberate afterwards and vote on it if you close the hearing.
Yes, but thank you. Number 10 is pending meeting minutes. Everyone has the minutes of the November 5th Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting. The chair will entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the pending meeting minutes from November 5th, 2020.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Are there any changes to the minutes that you'd like to see? Has anyone found any errors? If not, then I'll call the roll. Mayini,
Yes.
Condon,
Yes.
Ambrosi,
Yes.
Westland,
Yes.
and O'Reilly, yes.
Rob, that wasn't a firm yes. That was just a yes.
That was on the fence.
Oh, okay.
All right, number 12. I have a letter from Monroe Little League. They are requesting a extension of the deadline of the conditional approval that was issued on May 12th. They are working diligently to meet the conditions.
Excuse me, Mike.
Standing, yes.
Do I need to recuse myself?
Yes.
Who's that?
Bruno.
Bruno?
So you're recusing yourself?
Yeah, I'm on the board for Little League.
Okay.
Do I need to log out of the meeting and then come back into the meeting?
Just shut your camera off.
Oh, I'm good at that.
Okay.
And your mic.
Oh, I'm bad at that.
Yep.
Hold on. Give me a sec. Mute.
So because of the COVID pandemic, obviously they're having issues in meeting the deadline. So the chair will entertain a motion to grant the 90-day time extension to Monroe Little League.
I'll make a motion to grant the time extension 6-95-S-A1, file number 1254A at 67 Crossell Road.
I have a motion. Do I need a second?
Ambrosi, second.
I have a motion and I have a second. We'll call the roll. Mayini?
He's not voting.
No, he's not voting. Condon?
Condon, yes.
Ambrosi?
Yes.
Westland?
Yes.
O'Reilly, yes.
Hey, Bruno can come back.
Schneider.
If he wants to. Item 13, pending
here.
application deliberations. We don't have anything to deliberate on tonight. So we're going to go to item 14, which is, well, we already talked about 14.
Yep.
We
You
don't
don't
have
need
any
to- Nothing
correspondence.
to-
Commission reports, I don't have a report. We do have some information about the PCOD. Rick?
Yes, Francisco is recommending a couple of dates to meet with the entire committee and the commission to continue discussion because we need to move along. Although the state has given us a 90-day extension, Francisco is recommending, and if you can look at your calendars, to hold a special meeting on December 7th or the 15th or the 16th. What works for you?
The 7th.
Is a Monday.
The 15th could work.
Hey, Rick, I'm good with whatever, man. Whatever everybody else wants, I'm in. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, let's shoot for the 7th, okay, because we're getting closer to the holidays.
I think Ryan had an issue with that, right, Ryan?
No, I said the 7th worked for me.
7th is good for me.
And what time is everyone like, 7, or you want to do it earlier?
No, I gotta go with 7.
Yeah,
Okay.
earlier.
7.
7's good.
7's okay with me too.
And, okay, we're good with that, and staff just wants to report, Will and I have been working with the Connecticut Housing Partners. The application is forthcoming, you know, the site on Route 25. And it is an 8-30G, but they have been working with staff to provide language that's more in sync with the commission. So that is moving ahead. And anything else, Will?
I have nothing.
Okay, then
Motion to
Chair will
adjourn.
entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion? Need a second?
Leon, second it.
All in favor?
Aye.